everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Superintendent's Report. I'm Carol Birdsong, and joining me is Superintendent, Williamson County School Superintendent Jason Golden, to discuss the action that the school board took at its November meeting and other topics as well as we round out the calendar year, because Superintendent Golden, we do not have meetings in the month of December. And so this finished our business for the calendar year, not the school year, but the calendar year.
Well, that's right. As we record, we are actually in late November, the week after Thanksgiving. We don't have any scheduled board meetings. Every once in a while, in certain years, we might have a special called meeting if an emergency issue pops up, but we don't have any this year. So we are through, at least for the public board meetings. That doesn't mean, of course, that school has stopped. We've got a lot still going on, especially as we lead into the holiday season.
We have a lot going on, but let's talk about the board meeting first, and then we'll talk about other things. So we had student athletes that we recognized last night, and several of them are repeat state champions. So I do want to give a shout out to the Brentwood High girls cross country team. This was their 4th consecutive state title. And so congratulations to them. And Claire Stegall, who is a Nolensville High runner, she won in the 5K cross country run, and she also is a repeat state champion and a national qualifier. So congratulations to her. And then Ravenwood student Miles Raymer also won a state championship in the 5K run cross country.
Well, it's great that you mentioned those. We always make it a point to celebrate at our board meetings state awards and national awards. I mentioned last night, for good or bad, we don't celebrate at the board meeting second place. We of course encourage our students and encourage our faculty and staff when they're able to compete at those levels. But at the board meetings, we talk about state awards and national awards. And Carol, there's one thing you didn't mention. You mentioned the student celebrations. We have some great runners in our county. You also received a state award. You were named the inaugural Tennessee State School Communicator of the Year. And if I'm not mistaken, it's from the Tennessee, I'm trying to remember the association's name. Tennessee Public Relations Association.
Tennessee School Public Relations Association. And yes, that's our state organization, and a very nice honor for sure.
And for those of you who are watching, Carol has for years been the one to make those announcements at our board meetings. And for the first time, I think, you were not able to actually voice the award because it was your award. So I had the pleasure and privilege of announcing that you were the inaugural recipient of that state award for the communicator.
You stole that one from me. That's right. You made me go first. Actually.
And since we're talking about you, I'm going to add, those who know Williamson County really well know you as the voice of the county. We know that students and parents alike, on those first couple of snow days of the year that happen from time to time here in Tennessee, get to hear your voice that school is out. And you and I joke that usually on about day 4 or 5 of an ice storm, they might not want to hear your voice anymore, but boy, that first day is great.
It is truly a love-hate relationship here in Williamson County. Sometimes I'm beloved and sometimes I am not, and that is okay. But yes, we do. People like their snow days here in Williamson County for sure.
And I will say, I may be overdoing it, but I don't think so. You really deserve that award. Those who work with you, families who know you from the work you do here, it's quite apparent to us why you were the first recipient of that statewide award. So congratulations.
Thank you. And I just have to say one last thing, and that is because I have surrounded myself with very talented folks. And so the communications team that we have in Williamson County Schools is absolutely second to none. And I wouldn't trade any of them for anything. I'd put our group up against anybody in the nation.
And some of them are actually behind the camera right now.
That's right. They're working. So anyway, okay, we're going to move on because we've talked enough about that business. But let's go back to athletics really quick, because we do want to give a shout out to Page High School, because on this upcoming Friday night, they are competing for a state title.
You know, it's interesting. We had 4 of our high schools in the quarterfinals of the state football playoffs. And those 4 ended up playing each other, so the next week we were down to 2. And then the next week we were to 1. Brentwood High School made it to the semifinals and lost last week. Page High School won their semifinal game, and they were playing in the state championship. This is actually the 3rd straight year for Page High School to be in the 5A state championship. They play it down in Chattanooga now. It's at 7 o'clock this coming Friday.
Eastern time.
Thank you for that. 7 o'clock Eastern Chattanooga time. As we record this, it's this coming Friday. It's always a great event. The consistency of excellence that our coaches and our athletic director with the leadership of Darren Joines have put together is really incredible. You know, our vision statement is that Williamson County Schools will provide a supportive environment that challenges students to excel in academics, athletics, and the arts. And the celebrations for the playoff time are those moments where you can really have a clear picture of that excellence in athletics.
So we want to say, go Patriots. And we hope you bring home the state title on Friday night. Let's move on to board business, if we can, and talk about a couple of things. Probably the most exciting thing that happened at the November board meeting was that we have a calendar for next year.
The calendar happened to be the last item on our agenda, but it's the first thing we're talking about because I know families really look for that. A lot of their schedules for their families kind of center, for obvious reasons, center around our school calendar. Our annual agenda actually calls for our calendar to be complete in January, but our calendar committee got their work together quite early compared to the schedule, and we were able to announce that in November. The board reviewed it and voted on it. I want to mention a couple of key items in that calendar that are vary a little bit from the past. Number one, we just recently transitioned to where we could have a full week break during the fall and a full week Thanksgiving break, and then a couple of weeks in winter break, and then a full break in the spring. Every time we add a day to one place, we have to subtract it from some other location. So it really is a balancing act that our committee puts together. This coming year, the first student day will be on a Monday. For many, many years, it's been on a Friday. Traditionally, it's been a half day on Friday. A lot of the reasons for that centered around the logistical work our schools have to do. We have historically had a lot of people moving in at the last minute. So getting schedules ready, especially at the high school, has been quite demanding. Some of that is paper work, some of that is computer work to get those scheduled. This current year, for the first time in many, many years, our enrollment has stabilized. We did not grow this year, and that's a good thing. We've talked about that at other times. But because of that, the time demand that we experience typically on that Friday afternoon and really working over the weekend to make sure all students are in place, really, we didn't experience it this year. And so the calendar committee looked at it and said, you know what? We think we can structure it where students can come Monday. It saves that extra weekend for families where they get that one little extra weekend before school starts. We think that'll be a good thing. Our teachers are actually working a solid week before that. We have a lot of professional development. And when we say professional development, our teachers are professionals. They do a lot of work together. We're continuing to grow in collaboration where your teachers are working together to make sure that they get the best product for our students to help students master those standards. So they'll be spending that first week preparing and scattered through the calendar. A lot of times when students are out, our teachers are working as well. So encourage families to look at that calendar.
And we should add that the first student half day, and we do start with a half day, is Monday, August the 5th. First full day is then Tuesday, August the 6th for our students. Now that is for 1st through 12th grade because we start the little ones a little bit later. So the first full day for pre-kindergarten, early childhood, and kindergarten students will be Monday, August the 12th. Why do we start the little ones later?
Well, the reality is you could do it either way, but our thinking, the reason we've traditionally done it is we do a lot of testing and some placement decisions for kindergartners during those first 2 weeks of school. Make sure that we know where those students are that first time they enter kindergarten with reading, etc. And so we want to make sure that our teachers spend some time with them and get to know them before the school year starts up aggressively for them. Also, there's just something special about having their own day, the first day. They're going to be in school for 13 years with us. And having that dedicated time for the kindergartners where all the processes are in place when they get there, they can make a smooth transition. I don't know that we're going to do it forever that way, but we have found that it's been good for students because we can do some preparation work for them and get them that smooth transition. It's a fun day for kindergartners where those kindergartners are coming in, just those kindergartners, in a system that's smooth. Parents can go in the building with them and see their classroom in a functioning school that's been in place for week and a half, 2 weeks. It's just a really good first day for kindergartners.
And sometimes they're tears. And with the parents, not the kids. Sometimes they're tears, and our PTOs and school staff do such a great job getting those, especially if you're a first-time parent and you have a kindergarten student, and they do things, boo-hoo breakfast, boo-hoo yahoo breakfast, and different things like that to welcome the parents. And so we do have wonderful parent volunteers and parent organizations that want to make sure that all the newcomers to our buildings are embraced and have the opportunity to get involved.
And Carol, I want to mention one other item that was discussed at the board meeting last night. There was a question about could we possibly do 2 calendars in a row and have a vote for 2 years worth of calendars at one time. And the state allows that. One of the reasons we have traditionally not done that is because some of those dates really can't be nailed down that far out. Some of the standardized testing, some of the state schedules for exams, potentially graduation dates, have the potential to be a little bit more volatile that far out, especially those standardized test dates, ACT, those kinds of things. So we have traditionally not done that. We have a calendar committee that consists of teachers, central office folks, and parents, where they discuss all those details. We are going to revisit that question and evaluate to what extent we could give some predictability even more than 7-8 months out, largely because we have heard from some of our families and some of our teachers about schedules really for vacation, that lately folks have had to make plans even a year out if they have to get a reservation, et cetera. So we'll occasionally hear those stories that it's difficult for folks to plan right around school time. I will tell you, though, that a rule of thumb is to take the weeks that we have in that first semester, work from the week of Christmas Day, and see how many weeks it takes to lead up to that Christmas Day. In other words, work from the end of the semester forward. Usually it's going to be 21 weeks of school. Work your way back. 21 includes the teacher time, to get some kind of estimate of when school might start, and don't schedule right there on that edge, unless we are able to maybe down the road have 2 years of calendar.
Another discussion that always happens when we talk about calendar is making sure the semesters are balanced, and that it's so important for those final exams to be completed before the semester ends, that first semester, because nobody wants to have to be studying for finals over break.
Well, generally speaking, in Tennessee, the graduation window is going to be before Memorial Day. And so that is kind of the parameter on the back side of the calendar. And then the front side of the calendar is based on that winter break.
Speaking of, the end of the school year, you may want to make a note, is on Thursday, May 22nd. It will be a half day. And then the graduation window is Thursday through Sunday, May 22nd through the 25th. That's for the next school year. And I will just say the calendars are already up on our website, wcs.edu. Our fabulous district webmaster, Karen Anastas, has those calendars up. You can print them off and put them up on your refrigerator right now if you would like to do so. All right, we're going to move away from the calendar, and we are going to move to the 5-year capital plan, which there was a lot of discussion about the 5-year capital plan last night. I feel like I've been here so long that it's kind of old hat, but maybe people who are new to the district don't understand how we do the 5-year plan, and that it's something that's not set in stone. It is fluid. It changes every year, and that's why we update it every year and provide it to the Williamson County Commission. Please discuss that process, if you would.
So part of our strategic planning process includes planning for large capital projects. And so we have a 5-year capital plan that we address and review annually, and the board reviews it and votes on it annually. What drove it maybe 2 decades ago was our county government working on their bond rating, because we've been growing so fast for so long that the bond rating for the county makes a big difference on the cost of funding some of these large projects that go into multi-million-dollar projects. Now we're looking at some of our high school projects may end up in triple digits, $100+ million projects based on the cost of construction. So these projects are major projects potentially. So the county government structured that many years ago, that they needed a 5-year capital plan. For us, it's been a lot more than that over the years. It's been so that we can project out what we need and where we need it, let the county government know when questions may come, when we may need some funding for projects. And so we do that annually. Right now, there happen to be 8 potential new schools on our 5-year capital plan. We also have some renovations planned, some expansions planned that are on our 5-year capital plan. And we also include on that 5-year capital plan some major safety projects, some major technology projects, and some major maintenance projects, roofing, re-roofing, some HVAC replacements on these very large buildings that we have. So one key element to this year's 5-year capital plan that's different from the past is because our growth has stabilized, at least for 1 year, we have delayed our projected dates for completions of our next new schools compared to what we did in the past. So every project for a new school has been moved either 1 to 3 years out based on our actual enrollment this year. Maybe different next year, but for this year we recognize that we are not going to need to do a new school. From a funding perspective, the earliest we project we're going to need some funding to start a new school project is the spring of 2025. Right now we're in the fall of 23. Spring of 25 is probably when we're going to need the next funding. And then fall of 2027 is probably when our next school will actually open, based on what we can project now. For some people, that's a relief because of the cost. For others, it has the potential to be a disappointment because people love that new. We actually have 2 new elementary schools that just opened this year. Those projects have historically been about a 12 to 15 month construction window. But we believe we're going to have to extend that window based upon our market conditions here. And so some of those projects are going to stretch out because of availability of work crews to do the jobs here in Middle Tennessee, because of availability of materials and supplies, et cetera. So folks who are very interested in that, especially in those growth areas of Nolensville and the southeast part of the county, I encourage you to look at those capital plan lists for that plan.
But there are several projects that are underway and have been underway. And talk about Page High School and talk about Brentwood Middle School and those construction projects.
Page High School is actually now in phase 4 of virtually a total rebuild. Page High School opened up in 1976. They're the Patriots. That's one of the reasons I remember that. It was the bicentennial year. And it was designed for about 1,200 students. And it was that kind of design, a 70s design. We knew that area was growing. And so a few years ago, we set up a plan to replace the building over time and increase its capacity from 1,200 to 2,000 over the course of that. As I mentioned, we're in phase 4. And so we just got the board to approve the last little bit of funding to finish up that project. That project was about an $80 million total project over the course of time. And we had an overage of about $1.1 million based upon the cost of things increasing as we proceeded through through that multi-year process. So the board approved a little bit from those numbers perspective, $1.1 million out of a contingency fund that the county anticipated when they did bonds for the project. So that's a growth area in Page, and it still is a growth area. So we're excited that that building is ready to handle the next wave. Brentwood Middle School is very different. The Brentwood zone has been, from a numbers perspective, very stable for a number of years. Brentwood Middle actually received its second National Blue Ribbon School Award just this past year. Or was it maybe the third? They're an excellent school. We are actually totally replacing that building, not because of growth, but because of need. Because that building opened in 1970, and it just needed replacement. And so we're very excited that we're in that process. The structure we had for that phase project, knowing that students were still going to be on campus, is that every student who is experiencing the construction will also experience something new as they go through it. So we expect one of the phases to open later on this year. Students from 8th grade will move on to the high school, and then the students in 6th and 7th will continue to experience a portion of a new building as we're finishing that construction project. One neat thing about that project is we are expanding capacity at that school just a little bit to 1,500, and we're building more classrooms and some more community space, but the footprint is actually going to shrink. There will be more grass, more open areas on that campus than there was before the construction, because we're having a 3-story building instead of a 1-story building.
And it was very tight on that property. So Corey Mason tells me, the fabulous Corey Mason, I have a lot of fabulous people in this department. Assistant Communications Director Corey Mason says 3 national blue ribbons for Brentwood Middle. I also want to give a plug, because Brentwood Middle School is in a fundraising, doing a fundraising campaign right now. It's called their Legacy Campaign, and I believe you will be able to read about that in Focus. And for those of you who may not know, In Focus is our district email newsletter that is published on Tuesdays, and you can get right to it. You can sign up to receive it. It comes right into your email. If you go to our website, scroll all the way to the bottom, and that's the district website or any school website. Scroll right to the bottom, put in your email address, and you will receive In Focus. Rebecca Prather is our editor of In Focus, and she covers all things Williamson County Schools. So lots of wonderful pictures, lots of wonderful information, videos, you name it, we got it in Focus. So please sign up, and please support Brentwood Middle if you choose to do so. One other topic before we don't have a whole lot of time left already, but one other topic I want to discuss is Governor Bill Lee is having a news conference today. As we record this, it has not happened, but I believe board member Eric Welch brought up last night about vouchers, and apparently Governor Lee is releasing a new voucher plan for the state, which is quite different than we expected to be, quite different than what we have experienced since they began that in the state a few years ago. So I realize you don't know the answers because you haven't seen. We haven't heard from Governor Lee. You haven't seen anything. But what questions do you have about this new program? What do you need answers to?
Well, from what we understand from media reports, we are to expect at the next legislative session a proposal to expand what up to this point has been a small pilot of the state, in essence, funding tuition to a number of private schools. And the state has categories. So the proposal, as we've seen it, based on media reports, is there's categories 1 through 5 of different schools, which include some accredited schools, some non-accredited private schools, have the potential to receive state funding for tuition for parents to choose a particular school. Fundamentally for us, any new thing that has the potential to negatively impact the excellent instruction that we give our students is a concern. So yes, that triggers questions because we don't know yet what that may mean. The bit we've received from the media reports is there's a projection that the state expects to fund $7,000 per student for up to 10,000 students this coming year, with a plan to extend that over time where anyone can choose to go to a private school with that $7,000. If that's accurate, that's around $70 million for next year's budget. And so I don't know where the funding's going to come from. I know that there's been a lot of talk at the state level that the state has a surplus of money. I know that the state legislators are going to have to answer questions about sustainability if you're working off a surplus versus a regular revenue source. How sustainable is a program like that? But for us, what we know is at the state level, they just restructured their funding model last year, and they have a base amount that they give public schools, and then they give some additional funding based on particular student needs. Students with disabilities, we get a little bit additional funding, et cetera. That base amount currently is structured at $6,850. But that base amount is the minimum that must be funded for a student in a public school system, and the county and the state share that responsibility. So for us, we're getting somewhere around a base amount of about $3,800 in change from the state. So it's interesting to see that the projection that we got from the media was that they're going to fund somewhere around $7,000 per student, which is very different from the state amount that we receive.
Okay, I want to say that so I understand it. So they're going to fund $7,000, but we only get $38,000. And so from the state, right?
Well, to be clear, that's the base amount.
Okay.
We get substantially less than $7,000 per student on average, but because it varies a little bit based on each individual student, I don't have an exact average because we're just a few months into the first year of that funding model.
That's right.
But what I do know is that proposed amount that the media has shared of $7,000 is more than we receive per student. Our county government ends up bearing a larger proportion of the per pupil expenditure than the state government does. And so I know that there will be some questions about if in fact the proposal includes the state funding more per student rather than giving it to county government and putting that responsibility on the county. I know there'd be some questions surrounding that. That's just one example, the funding side. For us, the instruction is the most important. When we do our work, and we are among the highest performing school districts in the state, and we've been that way a long time, and we continue to address those challenges as they come, helping students master those standards and open doors for them. Instruction has to be what we're about, but it does cost money to provide that instruction. Cost of living increases, et cetera. 86% of our budget goes to people because we're in the people business. And so I know from the county government side where they're making funding decisions, they're going to be very concerned and curious about how that funding model is structured. I don't know what the future holds, but we're going to have a lot of questions related to that. Another big piece is the accountability structure that the state might place on those who are receiving those funds. What we know at the local level is with the excellent work we do, we continue to have more and more accountability demands placed on us. The most recent board meeting, we had a vote on what was called the TISA accountability plan. And it includes a requirement that public schools have goals related to especially the third grade retention law. In that example, our students actually happened to last year outperform that baseline that required the goals, but we still had to put that plan together. So one thing I know we're going to be wondering, will those expectations be placed on those others who are receiving those funds? Will that playing field be even? So those are just a couple of examples of the questions that I know will be coming up.
Which trigger several questions for me. One being, because we always report, the TCAP results and that sort of thing. My question would be, along the accountability lines, we report all that. Okay, so if an entity is getting state dollars, do they have to also report? Will they be getting these report card grades like we're going to be getting? That'll be interesting. Will we know exactly how many students at an entity that's getting these government funds? Will we know exactly how many didn't make that third grade cutoff, or that sort? Like, that's what you're talking about, accountability wise, I presume, or one part of it.
Well, that's right. What we know is with a smaller pilot that's been happening the last, if I'm not mistaken, 1 or 2 years at the state level in Shelby County, which is Memphis, Davidson County, which is Nashville, and Hamilton County, which is Chattanooga. There is an expectation and a requirement that students actually take TCAP. I haven't seen the state data, but I've seen some of the media reports that a portion of those students who are receiving those funds actually took TCAP, and there've been some reports about their performance compared to the students in those public systems. I encourage folks to look at that. What we know is, for us, our students have been excellent and continue to grow in those. So we do know also that, and I mentioned this to the board at our meeting last night, the state is now going to give us each school a single letter grade based on a formula that includes multiple factors. We've been focused on those factors. We haven't talked about a single letter grade, but that's coming for public schools next month. Our schools are going to be fine with that because we know the underlying work we've been doing, but I don't know how the state plans to do that for those private schools that are receiving funds. I've seen some quotes from some of those private school leaders in those areas where they've been piloting it, and it's amazing some of the language that they've used is similar to what I've heard in public systems for years, along the lines of, well, these tests aren't the whole picture, and they're right about that. But we know that from an accountability standpoint, that really is what the state focuses public schools on.
Well, and you have people who say, well, I want to compare apples to apples. So you got to have the apples. I guess one other thing as we wrap up that discussion is I would assume that taxpayers, especially in Williamson County, where the Williamson County taxpayers provide so much of the funding for us, I would think that they're going to have questions about how that's going to affect property taxes here in.
I think there will be some questions related to that. In essence, if blank amount of funds that could go to the local county governments get directed elsewhere, is there a long-term impact on what counties have to bear to support the schools? We're the biggest expense for the county. It's our reality. We often hear from our Chamber of Commerce leaders, our business leaders,
that we're the economic driver of the county as well.
We do hear that we're the economic driver, and we're proud of that. And so we believe that investment's worth it for our students. It's part of the fundamental difference in the United States compared to so many other countries. The way we protect and grow public education. So I'm proud of that. We know that needs to continue for us to be as robust and a world leader like we've been. So long term, there's some concerns related to that. I don't know, again, what the future holds, but I know at least in the short term that there'll be a lot of questions that are going to be answered in the next few months. We got that media report over Thanksgiving break, and I know it's triggered a lot of questions, and frankly, we don't know the answers to those. We just touched on a couple of examples of some of the questions that will probably be asked.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens, and I guess when we get together again, it'll be next year. And so maybe we will have some answers at that point. But hope you have a wonderful holiday season. And I'll just say Happy New Year right now, even though it is November.
Well, we're going to post this on the website, and maybe somebody will look at it in January.
Okay, maybe so. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Superintendent Golden, for all you do. And thank you all for joining us.